Can the Jayhawks figure it out and get to bowl eligibility? We break down how Kansas can come away with the victory at Arizona.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. And thank you so much to the everydayers catching all of our content here, whether you're finding us on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe, or anywhere your audio side of things with the podcast. We've been breaking down KU North Carolina, breaking down KU Arizona. And on today's episode, we're breaking down the keys for Kansas to take down Arizona on the road and get to bowl eligibility. We're going to break down how KU covers, how KU wins, players to watch that are going to be important for both sides of the aisle here, and then we'll finish up with a little FanDuel Friday on today's episode of the show. Let's start right there. How does KU cover the spread? So right now, Kansas is about a touchdown underdog against Arizona, and obviously there's a little bit of a difference of how you win the game versus how you cover the spread. Basically, can they keep it close? I think the first thing you're kind of looking at here, of if they can at least keep it close, give themselves a shot, you have to, I think, win the turnover battle here, right? You're an underdog on the road. It's a game where, I mean, it's not quite a coin flip. I say coin flip because, when it's a close-ish game, I think that makes it certainly a little bit more of a coin flippy situation. But it is one where it's like it's not crazy if you win the game or if you cover the spread, I guess. And so if you win the turnover battle, I think that just inherently tells me you should at least be able to keep this close. You look at Arizona, they have 12 interceptions this year. You only have 4 as your defense. So they're tripling you up, at least in that one category, in terms of the, forcing interceptions, forcing some turnover side of the ball. That is a strength for them coming into this game. So if you're able to neutralize that strength and then win the turnover battle, I think that at least keeps you a little bit close in this one. I would also say Jalon Daniels plays well. The quarterback plays well for Kansas. That would go a long way in them covering the spread here. But when you look at Arizona, going back to the interceptions, this is a game where, like, if Jalon Daniels, doesn't have the best game in the world when they're playing, I don't know, Cincinnati or Oklahoma State or something, like, that stat sheet or the impact on that probably looks a little bit different than it would in this game. Because if you have a bad game against a defense that is basically a top 5 national pass defense and gets a lot of interceptions, a bad game against some teams might be 1 or 2 interceptions and lower completion percentage. A bad game against Arizona is you're under 200 yards passing, or maybe even less, because I think they've only given up like 1 200-yard passer. You're under like 150 yards passing. You're under 50% completion. You've thrown like 3 interceptions. So that's where you need Jalon Daniels to at least play well in this game, to, I think, kind of keep it close. I would also say the offensive line doesn't get dominated. Like, that's something that in the Texas Tech game led to them being blown out. The offensive line was dominated. And then I would also say, like, the defense makes at least a few plays. I'm not going to come up here and be like, oh, if the defense can hold Arizona to 17 points, because I just don't feel like that's realistic. I don't feel like that is something that I'm expecting to happen in this game. Can you at least make a few plays? Like, Kansas defense is going to give up points. I think we've seen that at this point in time, especially when you're going up at least against the competent offense, which Arizona certainly is. They're going to give up some big pass plays. They're going to give up some head-scratching third and longs probably. They're going to give up points. Can you at least make a few big plays? It doesn't feel like they've been making some of those big plays recently. Like, not only are they getting torched, they're not really forcing the turnovers. They're not really like you look at the 2024 defense for KU. Like, statistically right now, if you look at, I don't know, points allowed per game or ESPN SP Plus, or like where they rank in some of these areas, it's not too dissimilar from where they are right now to where they were, for instance, last year or even in 2023. I think that one may be slightly better. But one of the big differences, like last year at least, they were getting, you'd get an interception from Melo Dotson, you'd get a pick 6 from Kobe Bryant, you'd get a strip sack from, I don't know, somebody, Dean Miller maybe, I guess, who's still on this team, but is now being basically used as an outside linebacker. It just feels like you're not getting many of those big plays right now for KU. I think 3 turnovers forced in the last 5 games. And whether that's getting a sack that ends a drive, whether that's getting that interception that maybe it is a pick 6 and then they go back down right away and they score a touchdown, but at least you broke up the continuity of the game. You got some points yourselves. I think the defense needs to make a few plays in this one for you to cover the game. For you to win the game, though, take that next step and earn the victory here. I don't know if I've ever been able to use this for KU. I probably could have used it at some point during this season. So I'm excited that I get to use this for a talking point here. A special teams swinging play. Usually when we talk about that with KU, or I have to or had to in the past, it was not a good thing for KU. But I look at this right now. Arizona is number 127 in the country on special teams efficiency on ESPN FPI. They are number 109 in the country on ESPN SP Plus in special teams. Kansas is 4th on FPI. They are 8th on ESPN SP Plus. So basically consensusly, you would say top 10 special teams by ESPN's main 2 metrics. Arizona is not top 100 is what you would say. That on paper means Kansas should have an advantage. How does that advantage play out over a game, right? I mean, if you don't force them into any punts, if your defense can't get off the field, well, then that's not an advantage for you. If your defense can't hold them to field goals, that's not an advantage for you, right? So it's like there's certain things you have to do to force them into the special teams plays. But we talked about the other day, there's about a 6.5 net yard per punt difference between Kansas and Arizona, which, it doesn't sound like that big of a difference over one play. But let's say both teams, I think the example I said was both teams punt twice. What if both teams end up punting 3 times in this game? Just on average, over a 6 punt difference, that's a 36-yard difference in the game. Like that is, think about that. That's 3 first downs. That's almost 4 first downs difference over the course of a game from just the punting, right? And then you get into okay, well, what if KU makes a field goal that Arizona doesn't, right? What if KU makes a 42-yarder and Arizona misses it? That's a 6-point swing right there. Maybe it's a kick return touchdown, which we've seen KU have with Emmanuel Henderson, and he's gotten close, I think, 2 other times to busting another one. What if this is a game where KU gets a big special team swing on the road? I think of when Kansas State beat Arizona, not this year, obviously they lost, but in 2024, they got a big special teams play and they dominated the whole game. But yeah, I think that is something that could lead to Kansas winning the game. I'd also say they pick up where they left off running the football. Kansas has not been as dominant running the football this year. They've been fine at it overall, but they've had games where they haven't been able to do it at all. And this is one where you're coming off a really good running game against Oklahoma State, but a big part of that is just Oklahoma State is not very good. Arizona has not been a great run defense so far this season, but they're better than Oklahoma State. And with Arizona's pass defense, if you become one-dimensional, it's going to be tough sledding. Is this a game where you can establish the run and win? Because you look at last year, you look at the Colorado game Kansas won. They won that game with running the football. They just road graded Colorado. You look at the Iowa State game, yes, Jalon Daniels was really good in the Iowa State game, but it was all set up by the running game. And that's what Kansas needs in a game like this. They need the running game to kind of take over to a level we haven't really seen outside of maybe the Oklahoma State game. But again, it's hard to know, is that just the opponent? And then I would say this, the pass defense has their best game. Doesn't mean this has to be the lowest pass total you allow. In fact, that's probably not going to happen when you look at some of the earlier season games. I just mean in terms of when you factor in the competition, when you factor in a good starting quarterback you're going up against, a good receiving core you're going up against. If this can be graded on a scale or graded on a curve, KU's best passing game where they're at least, forcing an interception at 2 or 2, where they're at least, not just giving up wide open receptions all day long, then I think that's another way you win the game. But that one feels like the least realistic of the ones that we've kind of talked about so far. Let's get to our players to watch and then FanDuel Friday. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by DoorDash. It is almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. For Kansas, we're going to go to the basketball court on the hardwood. Darren Peterson delivered, turns out, in a big way in his first game. He played less than 25 minutes, and he still scored more than 20 points. And for Darren Peterson, maybe we DoorDash, find his hotel room in Chapel Hill and DoorDash some extra Gatorade and mustard and bananas and things that help you avoid cramping issues. But he has delivered to the max so far for KU, and he's been out on the court. 24 points in the first half against Louisville. Again, super efficient game against Green Bay. Can he do it again against North Carolina? And just like Darren Peterson's been delivering for Kansas, DoorDash Streaks deliver your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the show. Don't forget to check out our KU North Carolina preview. We also had a crossover episode with Isaac Shade of Locked On Tar Heels, and we had our Locked On KU preview for the Arizona game. This is kind of an extension of that with our keys to the game, and now players to watch. Let's start with the Kansas Jayhawks players to watch for KU. We're going to start with a linebacker, and that would be Trey Lathan. I was looking at some of the different like coverage numbers, I guess you would say so far for basically the back. I guess I say 7, but sometimes KU plays 3-man fronts and 5-man fronts, so it gets sticky. But basically linebackers, cornerbacks, and safeties. And Trey Lathan actually ranks number 2 in the entirety of the Big 12 for players with minimum 100 coverage snaps, which is, a fair amount, but it's not like that big of an amount. There were like over 30 that qualified. He's number 2 in the Big 12 for coverage linebackers. So he's been really good in coverage, and that could be helpful against obviously a good quarterback in Noah Fafita, but also he's just been really solid all year long for KU. I got to be honest, I don't know why. I thought Trey Lathan was a senior. Apparently he's a junior. So now I'm getting even more geeked up under the idea that like, okay, you need to do everything in your power, pay this dude whatever he needs to make sure he comes back for another year, because as much as I think Bengali Kamara has had the biggest flash plays for KU of the linebacker position and maybe of the entire defense this year, like the ceiling plays, the highlight plays have been as good as anybody. I think Trey Lathan's probably been KU's best overall defender and maybe their most consistent defender this year. He's been so good at the linebacker position this year for KU. And I think, I just kind of want to give him his praise in this game. And obviously it's a position that, matters each and every week. And as KU is trying to win one on the road, like Trey Lathan having kind of a monster takeover game would certainly go a long way into doing that. 60 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 3 pass deflections. Our next guy is Daniel Hishaw. So Arizona, their defense is just in the 28th percentile nationally. So basically in the bottom quarter, just outside of it, in EPA per play allowed versus the run. So there are runs to be had against this Arizona defense. They're primarily using like a 3-3-5 defense, which, a lot of teams both in the country and in the Big 12 are doing it. Obviously that's something that, we think of like Iowa State all the time is kind of doing it. And so that means more defensive backs out there. And kind of the evolution of where football has gone has been, hey, even though you have more defensive backs on the field, the natural inclination would be, okay, well, I should be able to like run the football all over you. You have an extra DB on the field as opposed to having an extra defensive lineman or an extra linebacker out there. And that's been kind of the evolution of football, that defenses have figured out a way to still be able to slow down the run or stop the run, even without having necessarily that extra beef on the field all at once. And that's something with Arizona where I am interested, because the EPA per play numbers look not great against their defense, but the yard per carry numbers actually look pretty good. So is it just the sack yardage has really negated that, or is it just that because the success rate's not very good against too? Like, is it just they're giving up the key plays running the football? I don't entirely know. But either way, Hishaw is going to have against a pass defense that's top 5 in the country. I want to see Hishaw and Leshon Williams have 30-plus combined carries and kind of take over this game. I think KU's avenue to winning is Hishaw and Williams have big games for KU. And it does feel like Daniel Hishaw's playing his best ball at this point in time. And then Bryson Canty would be the other one. So I don't know how much Canty's going to play. He's been I don't know, like some of the recent games, it's maybe been like, okay, he's going to play 20 snaps or something like that. He had 2 really good catches in the last game against Oklahoma State. Obviously, he had the fade route touchdown, kind of the back shoulder. He had that kind of deep ball catch that Jalon kind of threw it up for him one-on-one. And I think that's the biggest difference with Canty and these other receivers, and why I would like to see Canty start to play even more, that he provides this level that like LJ Arnold, Quentin Skinner, and Luke Grimm had for Jalon Daniels, where Cam Pickett and Emmanuel Henderson bring more yard after catch to the table. Canty brings the possession receiver, I'm going to win the jump ball, I'm going to win the one-on-one ball. And we saw Jalon Daniels like to throw those on occasion to some of those guys and have some success doing that. And that's what they've kind of been missing, I think, in the receiving core. I would like to see him. I think when you look at the snaps, like Pickett, Henderson, and Canty, those need to be your top three, I think, at this point in time. And I think Canty, I would like to see him continually be targeted and him be targeted more in this game than and moving forward than he has been in his earlier games, because I think he can be kind of a game changer for that secondary for KU. And when you're playing a really good pass defense like this team has, you're going to have to hit some, like, okay, think back to the game that KU won in Ames a couple years ago against a 3-3-5 defense that had good coverage. Just remember all the tight throws that Jason Bean hit where he was basically taking shots to the guy one-on-one, whether it was Doug Emelian making a great grab or, LJ Arnold or Quentin Skinner at the sideline getting on Sports Center. It was kind of, hey, possession receivers go make tough catches. And I think Canty's going to need to do that at least 2 times against Arizona to maybe help you move the sticks on some third downs. For Arizona, some of their players to watch, we're going to start with Noah Fifita, their quarterback. He's averaging 8 yards per attempt, 24 total touchdowns, 4 interceptions, top 30 in total QBR. He's just a good all-around player, and we've seen Kansas struggle with even average quarterbacks this year, so that'll be kind of a test for them. Dalton Johnson is a really good safety. He's kind of more the strong safety. 84 PFF grade for Dalton Johnson this year. He has an 89 coverage grade, and I also think of him being a good run stopper because he had 59 tackles this year, which is a team best, to go with a sack, 2 interceptions, 2 pass deflections, and a fumble recovery. I think he's just a big-time player. I really like Dalton Johnson's game, and he'll be difficult for KU to deal with. Then Javion Cole. I could have picked a bunch of defensive backs for Arizona. Arizona actually has, going back to some of those coverage numbers, Arizona has 2 of the top 4 coverage corners in the Big 12, according to PFF coverage grades. Again, minimum 100 coverage snaps. Cole's number 2 in the entire league. He has an 84.6 coverage grade there. Also has a team high 3 interceptions on a team that gets a lot of interceptions. He also has 2 pass deflections. Again, you could really pick like 4 or 5 Arizona defensive backs. I wound up picking 2 here, but Cole has my respect, and he has a 44 NFL passer rating against. He has been excellent so far this season. Player matchups. We're going to go with Arizona's offensive tackles against KU's defensive ends. For Arizona, their left tackle is Ty Buchanan. Their right tackle is Tristan Bounds. They both have over 72 PFF grade. Both of those are the top 2 on the team. For the KU defense, Dean Miller, Leroy Harris, Dak Brinkley, Justice Finkley, Alex Bray. Those are their 5 main defensive ends that are going to rotate. They're talented. They've had some good games. They've had some good moments, but it just doesn't feel like everything's come together for the group as a whole. Or, I don't know, like it feels like Harris had a good game against Oklahoma State. I want to see it all come together for KU as a whole there. And I think some of that is a little bit like, I don't know that the 5-man down fronts where those defensive ends are having to drop into coverage. It's like, remember when Bob Sutton was the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs and he'd drop like Justin Houston or Tom Bali into coverage and then they'd get burned. And it was like, why did you do that? You have these premier pass rushers. Let them rush the passer. I would like to see KU be in more 4-man fronts, or if you're going to be in just if you're just going to be rushing with 3 guys, I would prefer that the extra guys in coverage not be Dean Miller, who's a defensive end. I'd prefer it to be just an extra linebacker or safety or corner or something. That's just my opinion. But KU needs to find more pressure. And it's going to be harder off the edges because that's where Arizona's strength is on the offensive line. But if you can find pressure off the edges, then you're basically saying, hey, our strength on the defense is the defensive tackle spot. And their weakness on the offensive line is more to the interior. So you like your matchup there. If we can win the matchups on the outside too, maybe it'll be a long day for Noah Fifita. And then I would say on the other side of the ball, Cam Pickett or whatever KU slot, right? Sometimes we see Henderson, maybe somebody else rotates in, versus Traden Stukes. So Pickett has 3 games this year with 60 or more receiving yards, but he also has 5 games with 31 yards or less. It's been very boom or bust so far this year there. They need a boom game here. Stukes, though, not going to be an easy guy to do it on. He has an 86 Pro Football Focus grade, an 83 coverage grade. He's their main kind of slot defender. He'll play some, box safety, slot corner, whatever. Over 300 snaps between slot corner and box safety. He's just a really good player, as are all those other guys in the Arizona secondary room. Let's finish up here with a little FanDuel Friday. This is Locked on Jayhawks. Today's episode of LOJ is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service with Supply House. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. Again, you can check out Locked on College Football, get you ready for all the action this weekend. Big one in the Big 12 with BYU and Texas Tech. You can also check out Locked on College Basketball, get you ready, and we have plenty of content up there for the KU North Carolina game. All right, so FanDuel Friday for you here. KU is getting 5.5 points. The over-under is 57.5 over at FanDuel, at least at time of recording for the KU-Arizona game. This is one where I kind of like the under. I don't know. I don't think I would actually bet it, just from a standpoint of like, it would not surprise me if any game the KU defense gives up 40 points with some of the struggles in the pass coverage. So for that perspective, I'm not going to like it. But if I was I'm leaning under from the standpoint of like, okay, KU might not be able to throw it super well against Arizona. You're going to have to rely on the running game more. It might speed up the clock a little more. Might make it tough to score quickly if you're KU. So that would be my lean there. I don't really have a lean on the 5.5 or not. As far as some of the different player props, let's take a look at some of these. So passing props, Noah Fafita is at 250.5. Jalon Daniels is only at 205.5, but that makes sense. Arizona's only given up one 200-yard passer so far this season. So do you go the under on Jalon? Or is Jalon one of the best quarterbacks that they've faced so far this season? Like if you look at, who Arizona has faced so far, it's like, okay, they've faced Avery Johnson, who certainly made the KU defense look not good, but that's, been a lot of cases with the passing games against so far this year. I don't know, like Rocco Becht threw for over 200. Do you think Jalon Daniels? I think Jalon Daniels is better than Rocco Becht personally. I don't know, like maybe this is BYU. Bear Bachmeier has been good so far this season. I don't know. That's kind of an interesting question. So do with that what you will. I'm going to be avoiding it because, that's just a really good passing defense. You can get plus 134 on 2+ passing touchdowns. I almost rather take that than the yards because, like, what if they just have to pass in the red zone? Receiving yards, Cam Pickett 35.5, as we mentioned. It's boom or bust. I think you're better off if you want to bet Pickett, do the Pickett alt receiving yards because he's either going to go under the 31 or the 35.5 most likely, or it's going, and now that I said this, it's going to be right in the middle. But like I said, 3 games with 60 or more yards, 5 games with 31 or less. So are you better off just betting the alt line 60 plus yards at plus 225 if you think he's going to go over? Who am I to say? Emmanuel Henderson's at 46.5. You have Bowden Gruen at 27.5. Feels like he's kind of faded the last couple of weeks after maybe having that like 14 catch game the other day. And then you look at the rushing props in this one. Jalon Daniels 36.5, Daniel Hishaw 66.5 for KU. You can actually get Kansas total rushing yards, and this would be the one that I would have a play on. Kansas total rushing yards is 170.5. If Kansas wants to compete in this game, that number needs to be over. I think it needs to be in the 200s. I would be comfortable betting that number. I think also if you wanted to, so you can get Kansas on the money line at plus 166. You can bet Kansas to have 200 plus rushing yards at plus 178. With how good Arizona's pass defense is there a world where they win this game where they don't rush for 200 more yards? So I guess what I'm saying is, are you better betting Kansas to rush for 200 plus yards at plus 178 than Kansas money line at plus 166? And then you also have the added bonus of, there's a chance they rush for 202 and still lose because the defense can't stop Fafita. So I would almost be betting like one of those two or both of those. As far as touchdown props, Hishaw's minus 200. I hate how juiced down that is, so I wouldn't be touching that necessarily. Jalon Daniels plus 160. Maybe you get a rushing score in there. Here's the one that might be a good play. Leshon Williams at plus 185. Feels like he's been the goal line back a lot for KU this year. So I think those would be ones that I'm looking at. If you do want to get fancy with it, you can get 2 touchdowns for Leshon Williams at plus 1100. But if we want to build a parlay as well, we'll go with Leshon Williams anytime touchdown. We'll go with Kansas over 170.5 rushing yards. And then we'll do an alt line on Jalon Daniels passing yards. We'll just get him to throw for 150. Put those together, that's plus 398 over at FanDuel. But I think my favorite ones there are the over on the team rushing yards, maybe the alt 200 plus, and maybe LeSean Williams touchdown. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. Check out our KU North Carolina content as well. Check out our KU preview against Arizona. And we'll be back for postcast for after KU North Carolina and after KU Arizona right here with LOJ.